Greetings everybody and welcome here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So as you see, I'm back from my walk this morning. We're going to try to do some videos in the morning now because it's getting too dark at night and this place has not the best of lighting. So I'm going to attempt to do them in the morning. It's a little bit overcast this morning, so we're getting a bit of a dark feel to it. Not that I really wanted that, but that's just the way it has to be. Okay, so we're here for the Monday night look back at a classic rock album, which will come out tonight. And I've chosen to do this album this week, which is Pink Floyd's The Wall. I did it recently. Actually, it'll come out very shortly. Like within the next couple minutes, it'll be out. My series episode, and I think it features this album as well. So it's a double shot today of The Wall. So, anyways, The Wall was an album released by Pink Floyd, obviously, back in 1979. In actual fact, it was released on November 30th, 1979. A whole horde of studios it was recorded at different places. I think there was a lot of friction between members of the band and people involved in the production of it, so they kept moving around and not being in the same place. And this is why I think this is the reason why it was recorded in so many different places. It was Britannia Row, which is in London, 30th Street in New York, Super Bear in Nice, France. Producer's Workshop in Los Angeles, Miraval in Correns, and I think it's Sherlock in Hollywood. Yeah, my pen kind of died when I wrote that part down. Anyways, the main point is it was produced in many spots at different times. I think different people were producing different things, and then they kind of all combined it. It's 80 minutes and 42 seconds long. That's pretty damn long for an album of that time period, and especially, well, it's a double album, but even so, even that is a very long album. Harvest, label Harvest EMI, and Columbia CBS were the labels that distributed it. Bob Ezrin, David Gilmour, James Guthrie, and Roger Waters produced the album. Okay, so and for most of you who are familiar with this album, we all know that it was written, pretty much dominantly written and arranged by Roger Waters. This was his baby, and there was a lot of conflict over that, and he had issues with members of the band, and members of the band had issues with him, and people didn't, it was just a bit of a mess. But they'd been going downhill from my reading. They've been going downhill for a few albums, and this one, downhill, I mean, when I say downhill, I mean in their relationships with each other. I'm not talking about the music. The music wasn't going downhill, but they were not getting along, and there was problems there. So this album features basically the personnel, or Pink Floyd if you prefer. Roger Waters, vocals, bass, and guitar, electric and acoustic. David Gilmour, vocals, acoustic and electric guitar, and some bass and synthesizers as well. Nick Mason, drums and percussion. And Richard Wright, Hammond organ, piano. Minnie Moog, electric piano, clavinet, and a host of synthesizers as well, right? So in addition to that, there was a monster load of session musicians, if you call it, or additional musicians, whatever you want to call it. There was a bunch of them. Bob Ezrin played piano, Hammond organ, harmonium, and did some backing vocals on tracks as well. James Guthrie, he did sound effects and percussion. Michael Kamen, orchestra arrangements. New York Orchestra, they did the orchestra part that was put on the album. The New York Opera did the choral vocals as well. Fred Mandel, he did the organ Hammond. He also played Hammond organ on a track. Jeff Porcaro was on this drums. Was on this album doing drums, not on his drums doing the album. Lee Ridenour, acoustic and rhythm guitars. Joe DeBlasi, classical guitar. Joe Porcaro on snare drum. I think it's Bobby Hall on congos and bongos. That's funny sounding, actually. Frank Morocco on concertino. Larry Williams on clav. I'm assuming this is clarinet. I can't read my handwriting. Trevor Veach on mandolin. And then you had a host of backing vocals on different tracks. One particular track, Bruce Johnson, Tony Tennille, yes, of Captain and Tennille, Joe Clamag, John Joyce, Stan Barker, Jim Hess. All these people were backing vocals. You had the Children's Islington Choir singing vocals as well. Harry Waters did the child's voice on one of the songs. Judy Young did the voice of the groupie on one of the songs. Phil Taylor, the sound effects. And then Chris Fitzmaurice, he did the voice. I think it was the male telephone voice, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. Anyway, so there was a horde of people taking involved in this album, and I suspect that's why it was at so many different venues, studio venues. So it's like I said, it's a double. This particular album comes with a booklet on the inside, and you have 2 CDs to cover the 2 different albums there. So during the recording of this album, of course, Roger Waters had Richard Wright fired from the band, so they kicked him out. 13 years in the band, I guess it doesn't matter. When you gotta go, right? So they kicked him out, and he was, of course, at odds through the entire album process with David Gilmour. And Nick Mason was more interested in his solo album than doing this, so he didn't contribute much either. So it was pretty much some people have called this a Roger Waters solo album, but of course that's a bit of a misnomer since it's got Pink Floyd on it, and since most of the guitar work was done by David Gilmour, and a bulk of the keyboards, of course, by Richard Wright as well. So this is maybe the last great kind of Pink Floyd album. Some people would say the Final Cut. I'm not really a big fan of that album. I don't dislike it. I'm just not a huge fan. I like some of the other stuff that came after it more than that. Okay, so this has a horde of tracks on it. Lots of stuff on here. I'm not going to go through all the songs because, first of all, you can't read their writing. I don't even know why they bothered writing them down in the first place, because you can't read it. I'm just going to talk about the songs that I like and what it is about this album I like and I don't like. Okay, so when I first came across this album, when it came out back at the beginning of grade 9, all those years ago, I kept thinking, geez, this album is so negative. It's so depressing. The music isn't really sophisticated either, like the instrumentation. I'm not talking about the composition. The instrumentation I thought was depressing. The drums were boring. The guitar solo was the only part of the album I thought was really melodic but really good, and the rest of it was just kind of simplistic and not really exciting to listen to. And it was a bit of a pop album too, which is quite a bit different than some of the earlier Pink Floyd, especially the previous album to this, which was much heavier. But there are some really good tracks on here. Hey You, sorry, wrong artist. Hey You, I like that track. I do like Mother, even though it's a bit of a dark concept. I didn't really like the concept part of it, but I did like the sound of the song. You're Comfortably Numb, of course, is a classic Pink Floyd song. Just great. Run Like Hell, another great, almost one of the heavier tracks on the album, and hence the reason why I like it so much. And then, you got the 3-part of Another Brick in the Wall, 1, 2, and 3. Of course, 2 is the big part that came out and played on the radio all the time. Very poppy song, I think. I don't find this album to be a strong Pink Floyd album. I know a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Everybody hears things differently. I just didn't warm up to it when I was initially. I've warmed up to it a lot in the last. I got the album sometime, I think, at the beginning of last summer or the end of last year. I can't remember. And I've listened to it a couple of times, and I'm warmed up to it because I'm now hearing it through a much more developed mind, I guess. Maybe might be the word. More mature person, I guess, and I'm hearing the album differently. It is a concept album, of course. Talks a story about Pink and all his problems that he went through growing up, which is probably likely just a pseudonym for Roger Waters' life, right? More than likely. And I've heard that as being the case. But I've warmed up to it quite a bit, enough so that I think that it can go on my classic rock albums list. I think it needs to be on here. It's one of Floyd's biggest selling albums, one of its most beloved albums. But it does get kind of mixed reviews. There's a lot of people that absolutely think this is the best thing that has ever come out in music, and then there's other people that think it's the worst thing they ever did. So, and then there's a host of us people in the middle who like it or don't like it or think it's good in part, not good in other part. I think it's just a bit lengthy, and that wouldn't be a problem except for that the music is like I said, the instrumentation is very simplistic and it just drones after a bit. So that's my biggest issue with it, I think. Not saying that there isn't some great lyrics. The lyrics are fantastic. A little dark, a little too dark for me, but overall it's still great lyrics. I just found the music somewhat simplistic for Pink Floyd, because I thought both Animals, Dark Side of the Moon, and Wish You Were Here were all much more complex albums and much more interesting to listen to as a result. This one I think it was kind of designed to get to the masses, and it did an excellent job of getting there. So overall, I think this is a good Pink Floyd album. I just don't think it's a great or legendary album like people will have you believe. Anyways, it's all interpretation by individual people and what they hear, and that's the way I hear it. And you can hear it, of course, any way you want to hear it and take it any way you want. That's the beauty of music. You know, the things that we love aren't necessary. As they used to say in the old days, one man's junk is another person's treasure, right? You know. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Look Back at a Classic Rock Album featuring the album The Wall by Pink Floyd. If you got any comments about the album or anything I've said or anything that you want to add or anything like that, you can put them in the comments section below. Please hit the like button. That's much appreciated. And subscription, hit the bell so that you know when this content is coming available. And I think we're gonna try and do these videos in the morning prior to my going to work, because the lighting is a little better. I know it's a little blurry today because of the darkness outside, but I just don't really care for the natural lighting or the lighting system we have in this place. So I'm going to attempt to do that a little bit more during the week. On the weekends, not a problem, because as you've seen, any videos have come over the last few days have been very bright in here because I had all the lights on, not the lights on, but it was very sunny out and stuff. Anyways, please enjoy your day, and we will see you again soon, or we will see you next Monday on another look back at another classic rock album. Take care.